talk about ethics today, and ethics really, as you all may be aware of, is a set of moral principles that allow us to see right from wrong. It helps people make decisions and show them how to lead their life in a meaningful way. Ethics is really concerned with what is good for individuals, but also for society at a broader good. So some of the key aspects of ethics really are respect for persons, and that in clinical trials translates to informed consent. Beneficials, to maximize the benefits for society and minimize its harm. And then obviously justice, which is really fairness in selection of participants, and ultimately non-maleficence, so the principle of do no harm. So into the realm of research ethics then, so you all are aware, clinical research is research that involves participants, human participants for research purposes. And as a result, when we involve participants, this poses some serious, complex legal, social, and political issues. And you've heard this morning already about some of these aspects. And today, I'm going to just give you an overview of what the aspects of clinical research are around research ethics. So research ethics really focuses on the analysis of ethical issues surrounding research that involves participants in research. I like this word cloud. I always use it to kind of give an overview of what research ethics means. And really the standout words here are honesty, integrity, trust, respect, and sincerity, morality. So it's just important to kind of, when we do research, to kind of always have that in the back of our mind why we're doing it, but ultimately, are we doing it in a way that's safe for the participants? And we can't talk about research ethics without going back a bit in time. There are historical reasons why we have ethical conduct and codes of conduct around ethics. And that really originates from a lot of atrocities that happened in the years, specifically focusing on the Second World War, whereby we had Nazi experimentations carried out at concentration camps during the years of 1933 to 45. These were actually perpetrated by doctors in the name of science on minority populations, such as the Jews, Gypsies, and also mentally disabled people. So they carried out a huge range of experimentation that actually was designed to inform a lot about warfare and how to support military personnel in warfare. So a lot of that research actually went and was used actively by other countries. But what happened then was, after the war ended, the Nuremberg trials were happening. And out of those trials, they brought these doctors in front of a court. And as a result of the outcomes of the Nuremberg trial, we get the Nuremberg Code, which is probably one of the first sets of ethical principles. While they're very basic, it was a start in that they set out the need for informed consent and for voluntary, getting people to volunteer on it rather than being forced onto research participation. So again, what the Nuremberg Code sets out was really that there should be principle of informed consent, research, and that really the research that's done has to have a justification or rationale for the society, and it should at all costs avoid physical or mental suffering. That was back in 1947. Unfortunately, significant scandals continue to arise. And if we go to the US, Tuskegee study is a key an example of ethical research. So a little bit about the study. It was started in 1932 in Alabama, and recruited by a women's organization. And recruited predominantly Black men in farms in South of America. They specifically had no white people included in the study. And they looked at whether or not the progression of syphilis in this population. Clinicians were telling them that they had bad blood and they were being treated for it. However, as penicillin came in during the course of the study, this drug, while it could treat syphilis, was withheld for the study population for the purpose of identifying how it progressed. And it wasn't until the 70s that there was a whistleblower that released information on this misconduct. And this to be ended. As a result of this significant scandal in the US, they created what's called the Belmont Report. So it's another set of ethical guidelines that really outline the respect for persons. So again, going back to voluntary informed consent, protecting those with limited decision making. So actually looking at people that have may have are vulnerable and children as well. And then it focuses on beneficence. So again, maximizing benefits and minimizing the risks of harm. The last one then would be justice. So burdens and benefits of research are distributed fairly. So again, it sets out key principles of how to do research ethically. Unfortunately, here in Ireland, we are also not far away from any scandals. So back in the 1930s, they uncovered scandals of children in orphanages that were used for vaccine trials funded by large pharmaceutical corporations, again, without proper consent or information. So again, it's very important that we kind of remember these cases and remember why we do research and why it's done ethically and sound. All of this resulted then in the Declaration of Helsinki back in 1967, which is really the gold standard for ethical principles. It's a document that's ever evolving. So the current version is back from 2013, but it really provides the foundation for scientific efforts worldwide in order to protect those who participate in medical research for their own benefit, but also for the benefit of the wider community. This document is a gold standard for ethical guidance and sets out with a number of principles what we expect for clinical research to happen. And then I guess we always have to think about the past, but when we're conducting research now today, we need to always think about, could the research we do today be condemned in the future? So it's a really important question. But again, it's something that we all need to take into when we're doing research. And as a result, we have an awful lot of governance guidelines and regulations in place that protect the safety and welfare of our participants in research. That is the process of the ethical review. So you've heard in a few of the talks that the clinical trials can't happen without the approval from an ethics committee. So their main role of an ethics committee is to protect the participants' rights, safety, and well-being throughout the study that has been taking place. So in Ireland, we have a number of local ethics committees, but also now we have the National Office for Research Ethics Committees. That is a national office that allows more streamlined processes for ethical approval of clinical trials, but as well for clinical device investigations. So the aim of a research ethics review process is to verify the scientific integrity, but also the ethical soundness of the study. A little bit about the process for getting ethical approval. So you submit your document to the ethics committee, and that's a standardized document that asks you to provide information on the study protocol and details anything that will actually happen to the study. Once it's submitted, the information that's provided will be assessed by committee members, and they will look at specifically the informed consent, the risk benefit analysis of the study, how participants will be recruited, and what the data privacy and confidentiality is likely to be. Once they've reviewed it, they need to provide a decision to the principal investigator of the study, either with an approval or modifications or rejection of the study. So again, when you have modifications, you have a set of timelines to come back to the ethics committee with the revisions of your details. So a little bit about the ethics committee itself. So it's set up by a set of independent review experts that could be spanned in the field of research, science, medicine, and law. This allows us to ensure that they are capable of reviewing protocols at standard that is deemed suitable for the review. They also often have members of the lay public in attendance as well, because it's important that when we're dealing with participants in research, we need to have the focus of the lay public in that as well. But the key considerations for the ethics committee will always fall on informed consent, that it's that the communication that's outlined in the informed consent form is clear, that they have looked at the risk-benefit analysis, so they're minimizing risks or justifying reasons for why there may be risks to the study. If there are vulnerable populations included, they need to provide specific safeguards as to how they're going to support them throughout this study. And the ethics committee also, throughout the life cycle of the study, provides continuous oversight. So in the case of any safety or data plans or changes to protocol, we need to be informed. So again, it goes back to the safety reporting, or even if there are any amendments during the study. So moving on to the regulatory landscape and governance. So I focused really here on the Irish regulatory landscape. So you've heard a few of these during the talk already. So the Health Research Regulatory Authority is the competent authority in Ireland. They approve a clinical trial, but they also monitor and ensure that we're adhering to the EU regulations set up for clinical trials. I've already spoken about ethics committees and informed consent. So we also have the Data Protection Commission in Ireland, and it ensures compliance with good clinical data practice in research, protecting participants and their data privacy. So we're bound by the EU clinical trials regulations here in Ireland. We're also good clinical practice, which is the cornerstone of how we treat and how we conduct our research in accordance with good clinical practice. So this document is really set out the responsibilities for the people involved in the trial, but also it sets out guidances to ensure safety of participants and the reliability of trial data. So it looks at the documentation as well. So then we're also governed by the General Data Protection Regulation, which includes clinical trial data as well. So the summary of the regulatory landscape and governance. So EU regulations governing clinical trials really ensure that research is conducted ethically, with safety and data integrity essential to its concerns. But the regulations not only protect trial participants, but also further promote credibility and scientific rigor of clinical research, facilitate the development of safe and effective treatments across Europe and in Ireland. Ultimately, it fosters harmonization across the EU member states, ensuring consistency in how clinical trials are conducted, reviewed, and making it easier for multinational trials to actually operate here effectively. I can't go on in an ethics talk not to mention informed consent. So I've just put in a definition, one of the definitions there. So what I've highlighted is that informed consent is really an agreement or permission to do something from someone who has been given the full information about the possible risks and the results. So really, this is the cornerstone of ethics for clinical research, is that we do provide informed consent the correct way. Some of the features of informed consent is of the information. So we need to provide the information to the research subjects, and that decision-making in whether or not they're going to participate in the trial or not. The second part of informed consent is to make sure that there is comprehension. So that you need to allow facilitation of understanding of what has been disclosed, and allowing them to give them time to think about it, discuss it with their family members. And then the third part of that is voluntariness. So you need to promote this very heavily, so there can't be, as we mentioned, coercion in the informed decision-making process, about whether or not they want to participate in research. Now, obviously, there will be challenges when we look at informed consent. And one of the key features here will be understanding and retention of that information. So I don't know if you've seen any informed consent forms, but they are often very lengthy and very text heavy. So again, it's very important to kind of think about what the participant will receive on information and whether or not that information that's provided in consent is actually understandable and written in a language that is deemed satisfactory for people from the lay audience. I mentioned the length of documents. And researchers and public on what needs to be known before agreeing to participate. So again, it's important to be aware of what the consensus is on research out there. and to build trust. And I get as kind of all intertwines with what the ethical moral principles are, is to build trust and integrity. It's also very important to allow for cultural and societal factors to be incorporated. So if you know your study population, their beliefs, any issues that any associated with taking part in the study, that should be something that needs to be considered. So potential stigmatization of certain groups that may partake in the in relation to samples, if there's tissue donation or data that's collected, then you need to be aware of what are the risks involved for future use. So how much information will actually be required, and can that be minimized? And what is the role of families and communities in making this decision? So it goes back to having a strong PPI initiative or network around these institutions that allow for this information to go out to the wider public. And then to eliminate therapeutic misconceptions. So study participants may believe that when they take in research, there will be a benefit. So they need to be made aware that there is a risk it might not be beneficial, but even they need to be informed correctly. So then how does this understanding affect decision-making, consent, or to refuse to participate in a research study? So to come up with some strategies, we have to think about alternative means of communication of informed consent process. So can you use visuals or graphics? And goes to your study, it goes back to who your study population is. If they're minors, you need to make sure it is understandable at that age. If you're dealing with vulnerable population or people with limited language, can you have a translated version of those copies available as well? And again, it goes back to consulting and engaging with local experts, but representative of the public in developing informed consent practices. So again, outreach, engagement with PPI and key stakeholders when you're developing informed consent will have that process. So on the last slide, just to summarize what I've gone through, but I put the word cloud up again because I think that those words resonate throughout everything that when you're kind of considering your informed consent, when you're participating in the study, and how you deal with the participant will be affected by your moral principles. So we talked about the ethical foundations and how crucial they are in providing a safe environment for participants in research, the regulatory frameworks that govern our clinical research and ensure that we meet the standard criteria. And then obviously we touched base on informed consent and considerations, looking at vulnerable populations or minors. So that's me. And again, if there's any questions now, I'll take them.